These are my favorite videos because everybody gets upset with me with them, or a couple people get upset with me. Is a doctorate of business the way to make gobs of money and your golden ticket to make extraordinary amounts of money? We often think of doing an education as that there is a direct line between the educational effort that you put in and the career success that you get, the salaries that you actually get. And I'm going to try to get you to think about something completely different if you listen to what I'm actually trying to say. So before you go and get a doctorate of business or executive doctorate or a PhD in the business area, go and see if you can do the same thing without it. Spend the time, spend a weekend. If you're thinking about this, look to see whether you could do the same thing without it. And I guarantee for almost everything you can. If you want to make a lot of money, get an MBA, honestly. Or if you're a very senior person, you're 15, 20 years out in your career, and you don't even have an undergrad at a lot of places, and you're just pretty successful, there's this thing called an executive MBA. It's going to cost you a boatload of money, but the market understands this. And you are going to do spectacularly well with that. And everybody gets upset when I say this, right? It's like, well, I am somehow the big meanie for delivering this message. I'm saving a lot of people a tremendous amount of hurt in the long run with this. Now, if you want to teach, go and see if you could just go teach. Apply to different places. You would be surprised in your local area that there are these things called adjunct professors, and it could be at a community college, it could be even at a high school. You could do part-time teaching in the area that you're interested in. They always need people that understand, maybe accounting or, whatever it is. They always need people that understand this stuff, and you could do some part-time teaching. And it is, it's a thriving industry to get into that. If that's your desire to understand, to teach, and to do those things first. Right? Like, make sure that you are well aware of what you're doing. By the way, if you're actually getting into a good PhD program, they're going to expect that you understand some of these things of getting into it. A doctorate of business is slightly different in terms of what they're doing. I got to tell you sort of the history behind them, and you're going to be upset, and this is why everybody gets it. So the way that business schools were set up a long time ago is that they were more of kind of like a trade school, where they were set up by people that understood industry a lot more, right? So it was executives, CEOs, and those kind of folks, and they just wanted to teach about the things that they wanted to understand. There was this moment in history where there was this big push. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it was a big push towards, having more legitimate, valid knowledge generation. And this push got more people that had more what's called the mother disciplines, or whatever you want to call them, like economists and sociologists and psychologists and all these folks that came into business schools where they were doing more legitimate research. And then the way that we are assessed on things, it was based on the legitimate research that we were doing. So this changed, right? And then the market became people only wanted to hire PhDs in business schools. Even today, that there is a very strong bias. I beg you, and people are going to get really upset, I beg you to go into, before you even apply to any of these places, go look at who is getting tenure track jobs at universities. Tenure track is very different. Tenure track jobs is based on basically a line from the sort of the higher institution levels, and they actually make a full-time position line for you. If you know what a line is, like a job position, it's for you. And then there's non-tenure track, which are people that have their money that is less guaranteed. And so it's less guaranteed, probably a lot like regular places. It's less guaranteed and they are more on a teaching track. And there's lots of people that do that. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but if you look at the people that are on teaching track, many of them are just talented. They don't have a doctorate and those kind of things. Now, when is it actually appropriate to get a doctorate of business or executive doctorate of business? Oh, by the way, it's going to be probably discount in industry, pretty much so. Like, it's going to be much harder to get a job with a doctorate in whether, these kind of more practical oriented jobs. I know you hate me already, but it's the truth that it's going to be harder because people don't understand what it means in the marketplace. There's this thing called a category discount. It's a legit thing. And if you're not part of a broader, a broader way of understanding the world, people just don't understand. They don't get it. So that's why I'm saying MBAs and executive MBAs, there's tons of them that already exist in the marketplace. People understand what they're about. If you want to make money and that's what you want to do, go get those things. They're so much better as an opportunity. Now, when do you actually get these things? When you get a doctorate of business or executive PhD or any of these particular things, well, you're already in your institution. There's two ways to think about this. One of them is you're already in an organization. So it might be you're already in higher education. It might be that you're already a CEO of a company. And in those particular roles, you might come to an understanding that I need to understand that, right? So you want to advance in higher education. Sometimes you want to advance to administrative positions. And those ones are generally restricted to somebody that has a doctorate of sorts. Now, there are better doctorates that you can get. They're probably going to be they're going to be less expensive than a doctorate of business. These are things like a doctorate of education. You might have doctorate of higher education, doctorate of learning institutions, these kind of things. Look to see if those things exist a place around you. And if they're from a legitimate university, they're actually legitimate. Now, a doctorate of business is really typically expensive. And what's happening now, coming back to that story of what happened, right? So we had business schools were much more sort of trade school oriented. Then they became very serious. And then there's a need where a lot of places are seeing that, hey, you know what? We are training people to become professors. That's not necessarily a good thing. We want people in industry doing these kind of things. And so there's this need that so one side is a revenue source, right? I want you to really deeply think about this. For a university, it is a revenue source, right? A university is a business just like anything else. So they want to bring in as much money as possible. And then on the other side, there are people, and this is why if you're like a CEO type, you've already reached the pinnacle and, you're looking for an opportunity to do well and understand the world differently. This is a different philosophy than in terms of advancing your career. Then you would want to get a doctorate of business or executive PhD or something along those lines. It's going to be bloody expensive. So really, really take that seriously, right? Like just don't get it just because it's really darn expensive. So the university is filling this gap. They're getting a revenue stream to often they use it to fund PhDs because PhDs are really freaking expensive. They're very, very expensive. Right? Like what they actually do, they spend an enormous amount of time and then they try to get some, tenure track position that often takes many years. And, the legacy that they provide, there is a lot of generation of knowledge and legacy that they provide, but it's 20, 30 years after, right? So they're looking for who is that famous professor that came from so-and-so's institution that everybody knows, and that so-and-so famous professor gives a claim and affair to their particular university because that's where they got their PhD. That's like a 30, 40-year commitment, right? So you're thinking like an executive right now at a university, they don't care about that. They're trying to to solve their demands right now. And so that's where a doctorate of business from the university side, that's what they're thinking about. It's like, a ton of money. But a doctorate of business for you as a candidate, for somebody that's thinking about this, is you want to understand the world differently. And you really deeply want to understand the world. There is a lot of what I call mind flips. This is what happens when you learn things, particularly at that high level. There's a lot that goes on, and the way that you understand the world probably changes about a half a dozen or a dozen times throughout the process, where you think, well, I'm really this, and then no, I'm this and this. And that happens all the time, right? Like you're doing these mind flips where you're completely changing your view of the world. And that is good, right? So do I think that an executive or a CEO with a doctorate of business is going to perform better financially? A super hard question. My own PhD, I am recouping the cost of it until I'm 55 years old, until I've done the net present value calculation. If you are at this level, you understand what that is. My net present value calculation is going to break even when I'm 55. That's a long time. And was it financially worth it? Hells no, right? Like that is a terrible financial choice. But here's the thing, I see the world differently. I'm a little more comfortable with that. I don't know. Am I an expert? No. But there is a lot that goes on between then and where you're gonna go. So if you are really intellectual, I would say, and you're just curious about the world, then you're going to find everything about it extraordinarily stimulating. You're gonna find everything about it very interesting. You're going to find it extraordinarily rigorous and tiring and exhausting, but you're getting a snippet of a little tiny world of the PhD world. It's a smaller, condensed thing. And people need to understand that, because that's not your job. The PhD world is the academic world where people are going to generate knowledge for a long, long time, and they got to go through the tenure process. It's a nightmare. But from the an executive doctorate, business administration view, or executive PhD view, you're getting a snippet so you understand what they go through. I love that, because I think more people need to understand this. But then as well as you get to understand the world a little bit differently. So I'm a big fan, always have, always will be. And that's when people get upset with me, is because I say to most people, don't do it. It's a terrible thing to actually do if you're not ready for it. But for the people that want to do this, you're going to go through so much. It's going to be such a life-changing experience. Financially, I don't know whether it's actually going to pay off. Ultimately, you're going to benefit in ways that you can't see. And if it's late in your career, I don't know if that's actually going to pan off, right? Is that going to actually be a profitable endeavor for you? I don't know. It takes a long time to recoup these kind of degrees. And then once you've got it, right, what can you do? It does open up opportunities to go into administration at universities. It opens up opportunities to have a more guaranteed teaching role, right? Where you're more guaranteed to have a line that's still soft money. It's not tenure track, but you can teach on a regular basis. Is that a good thing? I don't know. If you don't have experience with teaching, then you will understand. Teaching is a mixed blessing. It's rewarding to see people do well once they understand what you're talking about. But man, it's tough. It's extraordinarily tough. And you're going to be teaching 5, 6, 7, 8 courses to get that particular thing. To fill in that particular role. It's a lot of teaching, so you better understand it. Can you produce research with it? Absolutely, you can. That's not going to be your central role, though. It never is, right? Like, your central role is not going to be going and becoming a professor. It's explicit if you look at any of those websites. they're not gearing you to become an executive, professor. The only school that does that is because it's historic. It's the Harvard Business School. They still have a doctorate of business. The institution that I was at used to call it a doctorate of business many, many years ago, but they switched to this PhD thing. So I want you to understand what you're getting into. It's a lot of work, uncertain outcomes. Are you going to actually benefit? I don't know. Is it extraordinarily difficult? Yes. Is there ways that you could do this in an easier way and still get the things that you are getting for most people, 95% of people that are thinking of doing this? Yes, absolutely. Go do those things. Get an MBA. Go and, go teach at a community college. Get those things out of your system. If it still is a thing that you want to do and you're at the right stage of life, like you're an administrator, you want to get an administration and into university and you need a terminal degree, but that's expensive, it's a very expensive route. There's cheaper routes. If you are an executive at a university and you want to understand research and development more, you want to understand what it means to do pharmaceutical development, what PhDs do, and you want to get a nature of the process of what it goes through, great thing to do. Are you going to learn a lot? Yes. Is it going to be expensive for most people? Extraordinarily so. Is there a return on your investment? There's just too far people that do it for the market to understand what you're going through. And on top of it, you're not even going to know because it is such a difficult thing to actually measure. You need an extraordinary amount of people. You need a healthy market to measure whether the effects are there, and there just doesn't exist. So go and do it if this is you, and enjoy it and love it and watch all the videos I put out in terms of, helping you along the journey. But if it's not you, go and explore the world. Enjoy it in other ways. Find the way to substitute your burning, I hate to say this, your burning itch. Burning itches are never good. Never good. So find ways to scratch that itch in other ways that are less expensive, less onerous, and then figure it out if you like it. If you still like it, you still have that burning itch, and the medication that you're providing is not working out, go and explore and pursue those particular degrees. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.